complimentary pass to the event. Um, so yeah, we've right now we're looking pretty good. We've got over 500 people registered for the fall event, and it's looking pretty good. So head on over, grab your free pass, and today I'm joined by Amit Parmar, who's going to be joining me here in just a moment, or talking about some employer branding topics that are very important right now in our industry. So Amit is the founder and CEO of Clickify. Amit, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here, Michael. Excited to be here. So I'm CEO, co-founder of Clickify. It's an employer brand activation and engagement platform. Launched it about 5 years ago, and just really fortunate to see the world's largest brands and the leading brands leveraging the platform to capture amazing stories from employees, as well as corporate stories, and then sharing it out to engage with internal audience as well as external potential candidates. Highly driven by data and assisted by AI as well. So we'll talk a little bit about that today.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for that. All right. Let's talk about something that's very important right now. I think for a lot of people in the employer branding space, last couple of years, we've seen companies actually kind of shut down their DEI program. They definitely have laid off lots of recruiters and reduced their budgets. So how can employer branders demonstrate, their ROI or their worth, really their ROI in the work that they do?
Yeah, such a great question, Michael. So, what's happening in the age of AI now is, and of course, corporations are seeing this, right? You've got AI applicants, you've got, AI filters on the corporate side. And so what's happening really is there's this conundrum that enterprises are in, right? You post a job today and you got like 1,000 applicants, right? Like literally within minutes, right? So I do believe, and we're seeing this, is employer branding is going to take more and more of an important role inside the enterprise to engage with internal candidate pools as well as external candidates in a very quality driven way versus quantity, right? And to the extent employer branding practitioners can really show how they're driving higher quality of hire, which isn't easy to do, but there are ways to get there. We have a ton of resources on our website to support that as well. And I think the idea of employer branding and storytelling, it is so powerful in frankly muting or diluting the effect of AI applicants today, and AI filters at the company level as well. To your question, Michael, about how to prove the ROI, it is all about the numbers, right? Like if you're running a particular campaign, you spend X amount of dollars. Well, how did it actually perform? Not just the number of applicants, right? Because AI-driven applicants are just crazy out there these days. But really, how are you actually engaging with quality talent? And the way we think about quality from a talent attraction standpoint, Michael, is really looking at it in terms of, okay, the number of applicants that the campaign might have driven, how many of them actually ended up in the interview stage, and how many were accepted by the hiring manager in terms of hiring, right? And so, for us, employer branding, the way we think about the ROI of employer branding leaders is really twofold. It's showing data to engage with internal candidates, right? So internal talent pools first, and driving internal mobility, and then externally, how are you driving that quality of applicant?
Yeah. You touched on a couple things there. That's important right now, I think, for employer branding, and definitely internal mobility seems to be one of those areas. I think it's going to get a lot of momentum this year just because, it's the best way to really help with, stop attrition, right? People want to do something different or have another opportunity. And that's a good way to kind of keep people, in the organization. So, um, yeah, a lot of good things that you just kind of mentioned there. One of the areas that one of the things that you just talked about was AI. So let's pivot to that just for a second. This question comes up quite a bit. where do you see AI playing a role within employer branding just beyond, the content creation, videos and images and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely, Michael. And as we know, right, like we have very limited budgets. Often I speak to many employer branding and talent attraction leaders out there, and oftentimes they're like an army of one or maybe two at best, right? And so
Mhm.
because of that, I think that function is so ripe for AI assistants or AI co-pilots, not just for content creation, which of course, right, we all live and breathe that these days, but really, how do you decipher data, right? Big data that your enterprise is churning through from a talent attraction standpoint, and how do you leverage AI to power the intelligence even before the content creation kind of phase of the work, right? And so we see a huge opportunity with data powered insights to determine like, okay, what should your content strategy be? How should you position your strategy with internal as well as external candidate pools? And so we're leveraging that, of course, Clio AI, which we just launched about 3 months ago. We have 148 companies who are already using Clio AI in a very effective way to be able to decipher what should they be talking about out there internally as well as externally, right?
Okay, that's good. Yeah. From my experience, a lot of people in our profession just rush out and do things without any data. And like you said before, it's because they're just a one person team or a couple people, and there's just not enough. And so they don't have all of the data to kind of help them come up with some kind of plan or strategy. And a lot of times it's just they're forced to just get things out the door without really kind of thinking about it. Um, so, from your perspective, what is right now, or maybe appears to be some of the biggest or the biggest challenge for employer branding these days, and what strategies or methods do you think that they should consider?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, kind of outside looking in, when I speak with many talent leaders as well as employer branding leaders, I think employer branding often gets confused with, oh, and to your point, Michael, it's very reactive, right? We've got to hire, 10 data scientists in Spain next month. Oh, what's that campaign? Now that's never going to go away, right? I think that's bread and butter of what we do from a talent attraction standpoint. But I do think there is a huge opportunity to educate chief people officers and chief talent officers around the real role of employer branding and what it can do to drive retention, right, of your existing employee base. And of course, the attraction, not only externally, but attraction of internal talent as well. Rich, it's related to retention, but really, how do you attract and engage with the internal audience, who typically, right? I mean, you've seen the studies, Michael. Right, in any given organization, like 20% of your people are like actively engaged with the organization. The other 80% are just getting by, right?
Mm,
So how do you tap into the 80% who's just getting by and convert those into the 20%, right? And
mm.
and that's the real value of an employer branding function, I believe.
Yeah, there's so much there, and definitely when I first started in talent acquisition over the years, I've seen a lot of evolution, within the the profession, in the industry, and employer branding is definitely having uh, a lot of changes, a lot of good things that are happening there. So, where do you see employer branding headed in the next few years? Do you think it might evolve into something else like a PR machine, or maybe just they start focusing? We were talking about internal mobility. You think they'll be focused more internally or rather than externally? What are your thoughts on where employer branding is going to be headed over the next few years?
Yeah, I think the role of employer branding, frankly, kind of changes based on the market conditions, right? Whether it's a labor driven market or an employer's market, right, or a candidate's market. So we do see like the leaves turning depending on what's happening with the overarching employment market, right, out there. and I don't see that changing anytime in the near future. What I do see is better integration of the employer branding function with the talent management organization, the workforce planning organization, right? So getting less reactive with campaigns, but really, and I see companies do that today. So we're seeing amazing, glimpses of what's happening with the employer branding function today. But I do see that as the future. So it's going to be the norm as an versus an exception, where employer branding is like really brought into the strategic conversations about, hey, here are the talent gaps we have in the organization, the skill gaps, right? There's a lot of talk about skill-based hiring right now. And so how do you engage your, really your engagement engine, right? Into the conversation. So the way I see the function evolving is frankly becoming more strategic, more data driven, and frankly having a seat at the table at the onset of your workforce planning initiatives.
Yeah, you touched on a lot of good things there. I know we're going to be talking about that employer branding EXP, and that's that integration is so critical right now because yeah, you've probably seen it. Over the years, there's been silos. You have, your sourcing team, your recruiters, and your talent operations, and then of course, you've got these other outside um, departments like internal comms and the marketing team, and now you have a employer branding person or team, and so getting them all integrated is going to be something I think that we're going to see a lot more, as you mentioned, heading into the future here. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for giving these insights and talking with us. And looking forward to seeing you at the conference. How can people get in touch with you? And what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, I'd love to connect on LinkedIn, of course. You can check us out at clickify.me. So that's CLIQUIFY.me. Or you can get a free report of your brand intelligence at getcleo.ai. So that's GETCLEO.ai. Thank you, Michael.
All right, awesome. And I'll put all this into the if you're watching this video, you'll see it in the comments and you'll also see it into the post as well. So thank you so much, Amit, for joining us here today, and look forward to seeing you on September the 9th.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, Michael. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you.